Hey guys, this is Trig Day 9. So today we're going to be talking about the unit circle. So I'm going to link a video that tells you a little more in depth about how the unit circle is formed and how it's created basically. But we're mostly just going to talk about what it means and how you use the information from it. Okay, so you're not going to have to like create the unit circle, but there are numbers on it that you need to use in order to answer some questions. Okay, so we're going to kind of bring back together everything that we've learned on day 10. But today we're just going to focus on quadrant 1 where everything is positive, right? So my x values are positive, my y values are positive if I'm talking about like a point over here, right? Like +1, +1. Okay, so what the unit circle does is it uses special right triangles to give us specific values for special angles in the unit circle. So what unit means is 1, right? A unit is 1 of something. So the unit circle is a circle that is measured. It has a radius of 1. So this right here is 1. This right here is 1. The distance is always 1. Okay, so for this point right here at 0, okay, the value here is if I'm naming it like a point x comma y, I have my x value is 1, my y value is 0. Okay, and then at 90, my y value is 1 and my x value is 0. So that point is 0, 1. At 180 over here, I'm 1 to the left, so that's -1, 0. And then down at the bottom for 270, that's going to be 0, -1 because I'm down 1. Okay, so those are my four like axes there, right? Is 0 degrees, 90, 180, and 270. And then this comes back again, 360 degrees. And if you want to keep going, you can. So again, we're going to focus on the first quadrant here. So the important angles in my unit circle are 30 degrees, 45 degrees, and 60 degrees. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to find all of the points, just kind of like we did for 0, 90, 180, and 270. So again, we're just going to focus on these three for today. So when we are finding 30 degrees, okay, so I'm going to show you how we find these numbers for 30, and then for 45 and 60, I'm just going to give them to you. So using our trig, if I want to find my x value, okay, I know that my hypotenuse is 1 because remember this is a radius, right? So it's a unit circle, so it's equal to 1. So I know that this is 1. This is going to be my x value because x goes left to right, and then y value goes from bottom to top, right? So if I'm trying to find x, this is my adjacent side and this is my hypotenuse. So if I do cosine of 30 is equal to x over 1. X over 1 is just x, right? Anything divided by 1 is just itself. So if I do the cosine of 30, that's equal to x. Then if I want to do y, if I want to find y, that's my opposite side, right? So that would be sine of 30 is equal to y over 1. Okay, and if this is confusing for you, that's okay. We're just gonna more talk, I just wanted to show you like where those numbers are coming from. So we're gonna talk more about like what these numbers mean. So when I can plug that into my calculator, but again, these are special right triangles. So for the cosine of 30, it gives you, if you type this into your calculator, it's not going to give you an exact value. It's going to give you a decimal of like 0.8660. So cosine is going to be my x value, but that's actually square root of 3 over 2. And then if I do sine of 30, that one actually, if you type it in your calculator, it gives you 0.5, which is just 1/2. Okay, so that's our x and our y value. So these are the important values for our unit circle. This is what we're going to focus on. Okay, so if this was confusing to you, that's okay. We're going to move on from it. If you don't know how to create this, that's totally fine. That's not something that you need to know how to do. I just wanted to show you where it was coming from. Okay, so for 45, you could do the exact same thing, cosine of 45, sine of 45, and that's going to give you square root of 2 over 2 for both your x and your y value. Okay, square root of 2 over 2. So that's 45. And then for 60, that's going to give you, 60 is actually the opposite of 30. It's 1/2, and then square root of 3 over 2 is your y value. Okay, so basically what we want from this is, now that I have these numbers, okay, I can find sine, cosine, and eventually tangent of all of these numbers, because these are my special right triangles. They are on the unit circle. So one of the big things is you have to remember cosine is your x value. So I'm going to put this up top. Cosine equals x, and then sine equals y. Okay, so if I ask you for the cosine of 60 degrees, you're going to go to 60 degrees. Okay, cosine is my x value. My x value is 1/2. So the cosine of 60 is 1/2. If I ask you for the sine of 45, I go to 45. Sine is my y value, so it's square root of 2 over 2. If I ask you for cosine of 0, I look at 0. Cosine is the x value, so my answer is 1. Okay, so you're just using these points. You basically just have to know, okay, which point means what. So now for tangent, because that's something else that we learned how to find. So tangent is just equal to sine divided by cosine. Okay, so if I want to find the tangent of 30, okay, so tangent of 30, that equals the sine of 30 divided by the cosine of 30. Okay, so if I'm trying to find that, sine of 30 is 1/2. So I've got 1/2 divided by cosine of 30 is square root of 3 over 2. So now when I'm dividing these, remember, if I'm dividing two fractions, it's just keep, change, flip. So I keep the first fraction 1/2. I multiply by 2 over the square root of 3. These 2's cancel. I get 1 over the square root of 3. But remember, you're not allowed to have a square root in the denominator, so you have to rationalize that. And remember, to rationalize, you just multiply it by the square root on the top and the bottom. So I've got 1 times the square root of 3 is just the square root of 3. I've got square root of 3 times square root of 3. Remember, if you square a square root, that just cancels. So it's 3. So the tangent of 30 is just square root of 3 over 3. Okay, and you can calculate that for 45, you can do it for 60, you can do it for 90, you can do it for 0, you can do it for all of these numbers. You're just doing the y value divided by the x, basically. And if we look back up at our triangle here, how that was created, tangent is just my opposite over my adjacent, right? So it's the y value over the x value. Okay, so you can do that for all of these angles in here. So basically, once we have these numbers, all you have to do is figure out, okay, what are they asking me for? If they're asking me for cosine, it's the x value. If they're asking me for the sine value, it's the y. If they're asking me for tangent, I just need to divide my y over my x, okay? So one thing I want you to look at is for, let's say 270, if I'm finding the tangent of 270, okay? So tangent of 270, we said it's the y value divided by the x, right? It's -1 divided by 0. I'm not allowed to divide by 0. So my answer here is just, there is no answer. It's called undefined. And you can just write UND, undefined, okay? But if I'm finding the tangent of 180, that's equal to 0 divided by -1. I'm allowed to do that. It's just my answer is 0. So make sure you pay attention to those. Tangent of 270, if I'm dividing by 0, I'm not allowed to do that, so it's undefined, UND. And then if I'm dividing by 0 by a number, that's when it's 0. Okay, so you're not allowed to divide by 0, so that's undefined. You are allowed to divide 0 by a number, and that's just equal to 0. So again, biggest thing for unit circle is cosine is your x value, sine is your y value, and then you just have to use these numbers. So the type of question I'm going to ask you is something like, what's the tangent of 30? What's the cosine of 30? Okay, what's the sine of 90? You're just looking for and finding the numbers that you need. Okay, so using just this first quadrant, okay, you're going to go ahead and answer your homework questions for Trig Day 9. And tomorrow on Trig Day 10, we're going to get more into quadrants 2, 3, and 4.